Welcome to the new Grad Success Summit. I'm so excited to have you on this session where we dive deep into the strategies to overcome and avoid burnout. I'm here with burnout expert and the creator of Joy Energy Time, Erika Del Pozo. She has both a podcast, a course, and she does amazing fun meetups in regards to this topic. Thank you so much, Erika, for being here.
Thank you, Emma, for having me. I'm really excited to be here chatting with you.
Well, before we go into these strategies to help everyone overcome burnout or avoid burnout, can you just share your story on burnout?
Yeah, so becoming fascinated with burnout was totally accidental, and it was only because I experienced it. And so I'm an occupational therapist, and when I graduated from school, I took a great job in pediatrics and everything was going normally. And the thing was that I had nothing else to compare this experience with. It was my first job. And so the workload and the caseload and everything that was coming at me was something that I just thought was normal. So over the course of a few months, I started to get to this point where my caseload, my workload, my paperwork became unbearable, but I didn't know what to do about it or I can say anything about it. And I was literally always trying to keep up. And there was a day a few months into that job where I was setting up for my next patient. This was like, I remember this moment so vividly. It was a Wednesday afternoon. And I was setting everything up and my coworker looks at me and she stops me and she asks me, "Are you okay?" Because at that point, it was funny how I didn't even realize that I was trying to keep it together. I was hanging on by the smallest thread ever, but I didn't even know it. And that's scary how disconnected I was from myself, and how exhausted and detached I was. And I had such low confidence and self-esteem, but these were things that I wasn't even aware of. And so when she asked me, "Are you okay?" I started to cry because it was actually relieving that someone asked me that, because I wasn't okay. I was trying to hide that from everyone and myself. And so after that, thank God, that environment was really supportive of me. And I spoke with my manager and we were able to reduce some of my hours. And so I can have more time for documentation. And although it was it was a temporary fix, but it was, as long as I needed it. But in terms of my schedule, things really improved. But on the inside, I wasn't dealing with a lot of the emotions and the exhaustion and the coping. I wasn't dealing with all that. So I didn't change, but that little solution helped me in terms of just to feel like things were more manageable. But then I left that job and I went to my second job because we moved. And in the second job, whatever I went through in my first job was really just preparation for what was to be the actual burnout, because I experienced burnout in every sense of the word. I was working in a facility. Within that first week of going to work, I was coming home crying like never before. And of course, I didn't want to let anyone down. I'm very harsh with myself and I didn't want to be a quitter for a job I just started. So I just ignored the red flags and just kept going to work. And I just felt like I was in a circus. I felt like there was no control. I had no control. I felt like I was the black sheep. I felt like my opinions didn't matter. The injustice I experienced was something that I knew in my gut, this is wrong. I need to leave. And so I just felt, I got to the point where it was too uncomfortable. And then so once I left that job, I felt like 1,000,000 pounds being lifted off my chest. And then I got a part-time job as an adjunct professor in the OT program from which I graduated from. So it was really cool to be back. I went to school in Fort Lauderdale, so it was really cool to be back there, but now as a professor. And then I took a per diem pediatrics job. And so I wasn't working, I don't even think I was working full 40 hours. And during that time, I had a lot of reflection to think about what happened to me. But I also at the same time, I just wanted to move on from it. But there was a lot of there was years of just like trying to heal slowly but surely, just trying to work on myself. And then I got inspired on a plane ride with my husband to a wedding. I got inspired, like literally like a light bulb moment, like, like I've had pain and burnout, and I can use that as like, I use that message and convey that message to an audience of healthcare professionals that they are experiencing the same thing. Because, you know, and then I became fascinated by it and researching it. And I just realized that I wasn't alone. Like, I'm not alone. And it is a much bigger problem than we thought, which inspired me to create our brand, our podcast, Burnt Out to Lit Up, and just really like take on this role of being an advocate for people that are experiencing burnout.
I think I relate to so much that you just said. Like the whole time I'm like, yes, that's me. That's me. That's me. And that's why I really wanted you to come on this summit, because I know that for people listening, you can 100% relate to this. I mean, even from square one, when you talked about entering and thinking that you needed to be superwoman, that you needed to treat every single patient and do perfect and treat and do your notes and all these things, the expectations for all healthcare professionals is just outstanding. The amount of multitasking we have to do, the amount of stress that we take on. I mean, we're having to take care of people that have so many comorbidities, and we're expected to somehow cure them. That, like, to me, when I come home, that's how I feel. Is I feel like I'm trying to have to cure these people, that it's like impossible, but you're still trying. And that sometimes is just overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And it's just like, there's so much placed on our shoulders as healthcare professionals. And so, I mean, for those of you listening as a new graduate, don't feel like you have to take on these humongous caseloads that are unmanageable. Speak up. I was in the same boat where I felt like, okay, I'm giving, 12, 15 people, 20 people. Okay, I'm going to do this. And you want to do it. And we're put in such a hard spot, I think, because if we don't see those patients, maybe no one does. And that I come home all the time and I talk to my fiance about the same thing. And I'm like, he's like, you're so tired, you're so exhausted. But I'm like, but then that person doesn't get seen. Mm-hmm. So it's such a hard decision. It's, you have to weigh your own health versus other people's well-beings as a healthcare professional. And it's just so much. So, and I know a lot of people, and then, one last side comment is the fact that like you're giving us a voice, Erika, is so powerful, because before I met you, and even before I started to do what I'm doing, I didn't really think other people felt like you feel and like what I felt. And I was at CSM last year, and I was doing a little meetup, and someone came to me and they were like, I've listened to your videos and your podcasts. I didn't know you felt that way. I felt that way too. We were one class below. And he's like, I felt that way too, but I didn't say anything because I didn't think anyone else felt that way. So for those of you listening, there are thousands, probably tens of thousands, if you do all the healthcare professionals, maybe hundreds of thousands of us feeling the same way as you. And you have a voice and you're not alone. But okay, off my soapbox there.
That's so important. You don't even realize that. Like, I get emails, direct messages on Instagram of people telling me what they're going through, and how sometimes like this is the first time they feel heard, like, and that is really powerful to me. Like, that can make me cry, because it's like I went through that, and during that time I had no one to confide in, besides my husband, at the time boyfriend, fiance, but like, someone that can like help you through that.
Yes, 100%. And having those strategies are so important. So let's transition here to, say someone is already feeling burnout. How do they overcome that feeling of burnout? How do they get past that? And I think you already named a couple strategies, but feel free to sort of revisit those and talk about any other strategies you can advise people to do.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And I want to first build this foundation from the research that I've done, because I've created continuing education courses. And so there's all the evidence I've gathered that I've put into the courses. It all ties back to one thing, that the environment, like, although personality factors, which I alluded to, which I had some personality factors, although those play a role in the development of burnout, they play a less critical one because it's really a problem rooted in the work environment. And so I love this question because I think the first thing you have to think about is, where are you working? Are you working in the place where you developed burnout? Because burnout is a byproduct of the conditions that are not supporting you. In one way or another, you have experienced burnout because something at work is not supporting you, whether that's your most basic needs, like knowing what is expected of you, or your growth needs, like you're not given the opportunities for growth and progress, or teamwork needs. Perhaps there's a lot of conflict at work. Like, it's important to play detective so that you can understand, okay, is it because the workload is unmanageable? Is it because I have low autonomy and I have little or no control over what I do, who I see? Is it because your rewards are insufficient? Like, and rewards is money, but it's also social, emotional, and status related, like being promoted. And for some people that doesn't really matter, but for others it may like really matter, perhaps being promoted. Or I would argue that we all want to be appreciated in one way or another. So if you're going to work and your work isn't appreciated, and there's appreciation languages, which is like, okay, if you like to be appreciated via someone telling you, or someone doing acts of service, like showing you, like, thank you for this. I mean, there's and I talk about that in the courses I teach, but that's something you can Google, like the appreciation languages, and you can learn about how I like to be appreciated and how others like to be appreciated. And if you're not receiving that from either your boss or your coworkers, that research shows that causes increased exhaustion and decreased self-efficacy. And so actually, let me back it up a little bit, because I want to make a really clear distinction. Burnout, a lot of times people think of burnout as like exhaustion, and exhaustion is a huge component, but it's not just feeling tired. There is increased cynicism and reduced self-efficacy as well. So with cynicism, you feel really detached from your patients, or you feel detached from the profession as a whole. And then with efficacy, you're questioning your capacity, your capabilities, you're questioning how good you are. You have perhaps lower self-esteem, or lower belief in your abilities. And so this kind of it's a really complex layer. And so if you're exhausted, that can most likely lead to the other two factors. Or if there's a mismatch between your values or the values of the organization, for example, if they value fraudulent documentation, but you don't, that's going to increase just all three aspects of burnout in full. Or even, it doesn't have to be something like that extreme, but if there's like a misalignment, then your presence at work and the work you do, there's a disconnect and it becomes draining. So there's a lot of factors. And another one is community. So having community at work, do you have energizing ties with people? Do you have de-energizing ties with people? Are you experiencing workplace bullying? Are you experiencing harassment, or like favoritism? And so in all these different causes, and also like, not to mention like the demands like around documentation, productivity, glass ceilings. There's like at least 20 things I can think of, but it's like the main ones, the biggest ones, it's like the work factors, the autonomy, the rewards, the community, the fairness, and values. So it's really 6 main ones identified in research. And so I would begin, it's a long-winded answer, but I would begin looking at your workplace. And if those things are causing the effects of burnout, you can do like meditation and yoga, and you can do all those things. But if the main problem isn't being solved, then it's unfortunate, because you're not having you're not able to fully overcome it because you just go back to work on Monday and then the same conditions take place. So, if you're in it right now and you've identified, okay, maybe there is something going on with my caseload, or I would like more control over this, or I don't have enough breaks during the day, which is a subdimension of control, being able to control when you have breaks and where, that those are things you could bring up to your employer and advocate for change within your workplace so that you can have either a little bit more dedicated documentation time or more time to research case studies, or maybe you can have more flexibility with your schedule. Like, identify what it is that you need, and to the best of your ability, you can't always control what your employer will say, but you can control how you present it to your employer, and then use that. Are they receptive? Are they willing to make changes to help you perform? Because ultimately, employers should want the best for you as a person and not just you as a warm body, which unfortunately, if you are in a situation where what your opinions don't count, then it's going to be really difficult to overcome burnout because your opinions don't count and you're not valued and you're not a part of that like pie chart of work factors is missing. And so you want to feel like you have something like a sustainable workload. You want to feel appreciated and valued. And so I would begin there. And I know this is like such a long answer, but
you're doing great. Keep going. This is perfect. This is really actionable. Great. Keep going.
So I would say, okay, so once you've identified the work factors and the root of the problem, let's kind of shift it to personal interventions, because research shows that there are things you can do to decrease your exhaustion that is correlated with burnout. And so if you want to start taking steps that in your daily life, and I found that once I was taking steps to just simply overcome to face and experience the healing of burnout, I found that I wanted to explore things that made me grow as a person. So it really inspired my growth and my personal development. So hopefully this can do the same for you. And so some of the main interventions with that is taking a look at how you cope with stressors. And you can either run away from your stressors and avoid it, like going to the movies and hoping that when you come back home, your stressors are gone. And people that are burned out tend to cope this way based in the research. But having healthy coping strategies like healthy self-soothing strategies, and research identifies meditation, mindfulness, like guided self-imagery, visualizations, mindfulness, exercise, physical activity, and then also taking approaches to proactively solve the problem. So seeking social support from your friends or from your peers. Like talking to your boss, like I mentioned. So that's taking like direct action to directly fix the problem, face your stressors. And then in your personal life, other things that you can do besides mindfulness and meditation is you can begin journaling, because studies show that that's statistically significant with reducing burnout in a study of nurses. So methods like journaling, what else? I'm thinking of like all the different things, journaling, embracing a more optimistic outlook of life. And all of these things may sound daunting. Like, how do I become optimistic? How do I start mindfulness? How do I start these things? And that's why we live in a wonderful day and age where we can Google things that can help us, or at least lead us to a place where maybe we can find extra support. And like, maybe we could attend a self-compassion training, or, that's what I'm working on with my brand right now. Breaking down all of these things into short, manageable workshops, online workshops. And that's what I'm currently building, so that all this information that I typically give in a CEU is like broken down, and we really work on these strategies for healthcare professionals, because I just did a 2-hour course and the feedback I got was this needs to be like a full day course. So it's like each topic of that, each evidence-based intervention for burnout is like its own course. So that's why I'm just so passionate about it, because I've experienced what mindfulness has done for me. I've experienced what being an advocate for myself at work has done for me later on. And so it's like, these are like the different steps. It's like the full package of something that you can take to get to a place where you're an advocate for yourself. You are improving your personal resources, replenishing your personal resources, and you have increased efficacy, increased dedication, increased absorption. So you're your best person inside of work and outside of work.
I like that. Thank you so much for an amazing answer and going so in depth. Like that's what I'm really striving for, is to truly help the people on this summit, like take actionable steps to help them feel better. And I think these are really attainable steps that we can take. You know, we can easily talk to our bosses and just explain that this productivity level is unsustainable for us, and that if we could move it to this level, if that would be okay. And then just being active, exercise, you know, get sunshine, take a moment to just breathe. I think I learned, and maybe you could give a couple tips if you want to, on sort of the meditation and mindfulness, but I think I was doing some research about breathing. And if you even just take like a couple simple breaths when you start to feel anxious, or when you start to feel upset, or when you start to feel overwhelmed, that really helps to just sort of calm and help you through it. So I know I really want to go into how to avoid burnout, but do you have any quick like meditation tips or mindfulness tips?
Yeah. So the great thing about mindfulness and meditation is that it's trendy now, but it's actually rooted in a lot of evidence. But the fact that it is trendy, there are a ton of different apps that range from free to paid that can really help you get started, because I know it can be very overwhelming at first if you've never done it and you think it's like foo-foo type of stuff. But honestly, you can start embedding mindfulness into your day, and you can do this even out of red light. You can make it a part of your normal routine. It doesn't have to be this hour-long session where you're sitting crisscross applesauce like on a mat, but it can be during a red light. You can do it at work. There's a really great study on mindfulness in a healthcare team where it increased intrapersonal benefits. So it increased everyone's well-being at the end of the study, but it also increased the team's well-being as a team. So in mindfulness, like mini mindfulness huddles at work, just being grateful, or you can bring in gratitude into that practice as well. But acknowledging, this is how I feel, this is what I see. I like to incorporate a lot of the sensory component to it. Like I see this, I hear this, I feel this in my environment right now. And that is mindfulness. You are not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about the past. And anxiety and stress we can elicit that response at any given time and turn on our sympathetic nervous system when we think about stressors, when we replay that stressful meeting, or we anticipate tomorrow's treatment that's going to be difficult. But mindfulness is truly what you see, hear, and feel right now. And then also being aware of what's tense, how you're breathing. It's not really like you're not changing anything, but you are creating awareness around how it is that you are right now, your state. And then that can bring so much awareness into your everyday, and you start to check in with yourself more and more. Once you check in with yourself more and more, then you can ask yourself questions like, how is this belief about this situation serving me? Is this belief based in real evidence in terms of like dealing with stressors? Oh, maybe I can approach it this way. I've noticed, it can just open the door for a lot of like cognitive restructuring. And so, mindfulness and gratitude are my two favorite things.
And I think it's all about like, my fiance is actually really great at that, because I can get a little grumpy, and he's always just try to think about the positive. Or if it's something that in the past bothers you and you keep on bringing it up and thinking about it, just overcome it, forget about it. It's the past, we're in the now. And I think, just trying to find what works for you and then trying to use that. If you feel a little bit of relief, then think about how you can grow that strategy and use it more in your daily life. Excellent strategies. Now let's move on to, say you're a fresh new graduate. Hopefully you're not burned out at all, and we don't want you to be. So how do you altogether avoid burnout? Mm-hmm. And that's an impossible question, by the way. So I know it's a hard question.
Yeah. So I think also in tackling these like questions, like overcoming and avoiding it, it's so packed. Like the answers are so packed. And so in terms of avoiding, if you know what to look for, if you know what burnout is and what it isn't, like it isn't depression, but although burnout and depression can coexist, and burnout isn't just exhaustion, it's the cynicism, exhaustion, and decrease of efficacy. And now that you know, okay, it's the work environment that can cause burnout, you want to, when you're applying for jobs, when you're interviewing for jobs, you can get a sense of it in the air sometimes, because actually research shows it is a group phenomenon more than it is a individual one, and it's described as contagious. And in one study, healthcare professionals that were complaining about feelings of burnout to others in their team infected other people with burnout. And so knowing that it's a group phenomenon, it's so important to look at the overall energy dynamics of a team. And how is it, is it like a corrosive environment where there's aggression, where there's internal politics, where there's destructive behaviors, or on the lower, still bad, poor quality, but like lower intensity? Are people just over it? Are they withdrawn? Are they fatigued? Like sometimes you can see and sense that fatigue. Is there low psychological safety where people don't feel safe to express their how they feel? They don't feel safe to discuss certain things or to try something new. So it's like there's different dimensions of energy, and looking at the psychological energy, looking at social energy. Are people just going to work and they're going home, but there's not that real sense of a team, and you don't feel that strong support? And, when you're first applying to a job, you're not going to know all this. So it might be helpful for you to shadow someone, not, to kind of get away from the employer that just interviewed you, and spend some time with the actual employees and see how they operate. How do they interact with each other? Is there anything that's unethical and ethical that's going on? Is there weird rules like, oh, we can't talk to this therapist? So that it's like, you want to look at the dynamics. Do people have the materials and equipment they need to do their job well? Are there opportunities for growth? Because a strong culture of learning increases employee engagement, and being engaged and having stamina at work, it's the most ideal energy. It's like productive energy. And there's actually 4 quadrants of energy in research. And when you observe a corrosive environment where there's like sparks flying everywhere, or where there's just open signs of withdrawal and burnout and fatigue, then you may think twice before, I hope that would deter you from taking that job. And it's like, sometimes a lot of what happened in my case is that the financial reward was highly emphasized, almost as a way to compensate for the type of environment I was going to get into. And that's something that I made the mistake where I didn't shadow. I just blindly accepted. And then I got myself in a whole lot of trouble from the beginning. And I saw how normal daily operations ran. It was something I did not align with. So be strong with your values. And if you want to avoid it, although it is a problem that's rooted in the environment, you can take personal responsibility for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with working on improving yourself. Like I said, burnout allowed me to develop, to explore personal development. And, if I didn't experience that, I would probably, I don't know, I just feel like I've grown so much spiritually, like as a person, that I wouldn't have, I wasn't on that trajectory before. And it's like, how can you grow personally? And that sounds kind of cheesy sometimes, or cliche, but when you get to that, when you build that self-awareness through mindfulness and meditation, and you begin to read books and listen to podcasts and take like this free summit, that's a part of growth and development. So it's like, how are you challenging yourself, or how are you carving out times in your day, in your week, to properly rest and rejuvenate? How are you, how's your sleep? Like taking an audit of your current life and your current habits, routines, roles, and rituals, very OT language, but in terms of like, how is that supporting your energy? You know, I believe that like you can take, no matter where you are in life, whether you are trying to avoid burnout or not, I think that taking into account how you are growing as a person and being the best well-rounded person you can be is going to be a great asset, and it's going to only build your resilience and build your resources, your emotional resources that you're going to need working in healthcare anyway. So you want to rise above like the bare minimum and status quo of just going to work and doing your work and going home and watching TV. You want to, there's nothing wrong with TV, but you want to always be, you know, maybe I can read a book, maybe I can take a walk, maybe I could, you know, hang out, meet new people that are interested in these healthy habits too. And it's like, how, you know, I feel like it's an upward spiraling effect. You want to spiral upward in your life, not spiral downward.
Yes, I agree 100% with that. Those are excellent actionable tactics. And I agree with you 100% there. It all comes down to, first is job, you know, just choose the right job environment for you. You know, it's the employer, because sometimes your supervisors are micromanagers and you don't get along with micromanagers. Then it's the team, because the team is so important too. You know, are your coworkers getting along? Are they working with you? Especially as a new graduate where you may need more help, more assistance, more support. That's so valuable. And then are they, like what you talked about earlier, are they appreciating you? Are there events that do that? And then growth, you know, with a lack of growth comes frustration, and that can lead to burnout. So are there opportunities for you to maybe mentor and shadow other people, to visit other units, to maybe do a combination of outpatient and acute, just a whole variety of things, take continuing education courses. And then I really like how you combined, you know, the work environment with also, it's still up to us. You know, it's up to us to create a good habit from day one. And we want you, those of you on the summit, to create a good habit from day one, you know, doing the self-reflection before it gets too late. Because for me, I feel like my burnout at least was a compounding effect. You know, it started small, and then you get to a level of point and you may not be able to recover from that. You know, and so if you can start early, if I had someone like you telling me these things, I would sort of know, is that job that pays more worth it? And that's what you have to ask yourself. And you have to make sure that in the interview, have these questions in addition to the normal questions we ask in a job interview. Very powerful answers.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Yes, please.
So yeah, this is important, because when you enter healthcare, you don't think burnout can happen to you, because it's not even on your radar. It's not even on like in your realm of possibility. So we are really eager when we enter, and we have positive qualities and expectations. And then what happened to you, what happened to me, what happens with burnout is that it isn't a response to acute stressors. It's a response to chronic fatigue and work conflict. And so you don't see it happening. You are in it. You don't see it from the outside in. And so if you have things working for you, like awareness, like helpful, rejuvenating, spiritual, physical, emotional practices, if you don't have that working for you, then unfortunately, you know, the worst case scenario is that you continue to stay in healthcare, but you produce the minimum output, and every aspect of your life is like affected by the burnout, because there's a lot of work-home conflict, and your energy and your sleep, and it all fuses together, and you don't have psychological detachment from work. And you know, so you can become a person where you're just putting out the minimum output, and then what happens at work will spill over into your life, and then it's like nothing is working for you. Or a lot of people just want to jump ship and leave healthcare entirely. And it's like, you didn't enter healthcare asking to get burned out. And so it's like, we have to take charge of how we advocate for ourselves. And, you know, one day we, you know, depending on who's watching, but it's like, we're employees, but one day we'll be the managers we'll be the leaders, and we don't want to just do what's been done because that's clearly not working. And not to say that there aren't managers out there now that are awesome, because there are, but it's like healthcare as a whole is based on this broken system, and we don't see that going into school. We don't see that. Like we don't talk about that, and so it's something that is really important, especially for students and new grads, to be aware of, because it is an epidemic that is impacting us all. And that's why it's this movement of making work a better place, and that we can be a part of and that we can advocate for. And we can't change every employer. We can't change every job. So you can do the best you can, but if they're not helping you, then you have to leave and do what's best for you at the end of the day.
I agree 100%, and break the chain. And you know what, now that you have these actionable tips and this advice, if you see other people that are looking like what Erika looked when she felt burnt out, or that how you feel inside, and if you see that, like, please speak up and let them know, because I know that a lot of people are suffering silently.
Yes.
And we just want to break the cycle. This is a crisis, but it can be prevented. It can be stopped if you know how to stop it. Erika, I know you're doing a lot of other great things to help with burnout. To summarize, do you want to end with any more quick tips, and then share if people have any more questions where they can go?
Let me
You've already shared a bunch.
I know. And I feel I feel like I've laid a lot, but last tip I would share with you is that practice some self-compassion. Like, I was really harsh with myself once I went through all that, and I was putting a lot of blame on myself. Like, how could I have stood for that? How could I have, but self-compassion is correlated with decreased depression, decreased anxiety, and increased optimism, increased happiness, and connectedness. So wherever you are, if you are in it, even if you're not in burnout, or wherever you are in your life, self-compassion is an invaluable tool. And especially during really hard days where we don't even know how we're going to get through the day, take a moment, go to the bathroom, or even if you can't leave the situation, in your head, just say, may I be kind to myself right now? May I show myself kindness? And like, it sounds so simple, but when you give yourself permission to be kind to yourself during really hard days or hard moments in your life, like, you feel the release in your body. And I felt, once I learned that, and once I was showing self-compassion to myself, I realized that we are just so harsh with ourselves. So self-compassion and putting like a hand on your heart, if you can, if you have some privacy, or no one even knows what you're doing, you can do it and no one would have to know. But it's like, self-compassion is a wonderful tool. It makes suffering, it makes stress a lot more bearable. And it's like you're giving yourself a break. Like, I love you. You tell you, like, I love you, I love myself, and I'm kind to myself. I'm here for myself. And that just gives you a lot of release and freedom. What was the other part of your question?
No, that was great. I feel more loved now. Just where, you've got so many more tips, and everyone, there's a lot more that we can cover on this topic. So just where people can go if they have any more questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, joyenergytime.com is where you can, that's like the mother, where you can find everything, where you can find our podcast. You can search for our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And that is called Burnt Out to Lit Up. So that's the name of our podcast. And I co-record with my husband. He's a physical therapist. And so we have shows every week, and hopefully more bonus episodes coming out. And the podcast is great because it's a lot of different interviews with people from different walks of wellness and healthcare, and they're bringing their best tips and information to help you live your most thriving life in all the aspects of wellness. So I try to make that show really holistic. But you can also find me on Instagram, joy.energy.time. And I love Instagram. It's my favorite because I can really engage with my audience, and I like to post a lot of helpful content on there. But if you go to the website, you can find all that information. And depending on, like, I know you said this is coming out in August, but depending on whether it's finished or not, I will have some mini online workshops breaking down all these burnout topics with some actionable like things you can do in terms of like different worksheets and stuff. So that you can find that on the website as well. And we also have some free guides, and we have some other resources on our site that you can check out. And lastly, we have an ambassador program. So we're encouraging healthcare professionals to really join us in this movement of wellness and advocacy. So if you want to find out more about the ambassador program or a guest post, a blog on our site, then you can find all that information on the website.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erika, for being on this summit and to really share amazing, actionable information. I can tell you know your stuff, and there's so much more that we can dig deeper into, and just keep doing what you're doing. And for those of you on this summit, thank you for attending this session. We really hope you learned a bunch. Feel free to comment below any questions you have for Erika, any love that you have for her and what she's trying to do to help the healthcare profession. And we look forward to seeing you in the other sessions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.